Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's Markets to Watch newsletter from Smack the Markets for the week beginning 6th of September 2021. So this week we begin on a low volume day. We have the holiday in the US. We have Labor Day in the US and Canada today. But last week we had a very interesting week. We finished up with non-farms on Friday and they came in quite a lot lower than was expected. The consensus was 750,000, 100,000, and we came in at 235. So that was a significant miss on that. It also was in line with the theme that was going on last week with a more disappointing jobs numbers from the US. We had the initial jobless claims on Thursday that came in, the lowest number since prior to the pandemic, and we also had the ADP missing quite a bit, almost half the number that we're expecting on the Wednesday. So a theme creeping in the US of the jobs market struggling to recover to the expected recovery that was envisaged earlier in the summer, and maybe tapering having an effect when tapering is going to begin on that if those numbers or that trend continues. Also this week we have a quiet day today, obviously with the Labor Day in the US and Canada, but we also have some very interesting items this week. We have 3 interest rate decisions from Canada, Australia and the Eurozone, so plenty of stuff there to keep the markets interested. So if we just begin and take a look at the NASDAQ this week, the mini Dow is still stuck below that 35,500 level, so that's not looking too interesting. But the NASDAQ has already broken into a new all-time high, actually, on this low volume day already this early in the week. So we can see what happened here last week, another strong week after the previous week as well being a strong week. Now, it did spend most of last week in a range. It did hit kind of all-time highs earlier in the week and then got into a range. But today, as you can see, after the positive day it had on Friday, it's continuation of that move, and we're getting through this higher part of the resistance here. And we can see also that there's a big round number there just above price. It's 15,700. So interesting looking chart there. It did slide more or less back into the daily moving average zone. And if we just look at the lower time frames here, we can see the kind of action we've had here. If we open up the 60-minute chart, we can see that the importance of these pivots to the price. We had pivots capping price most of last week, and they were very important to the market, resisting it on the non-farm volatility as well, both sides on that whipsaw action that we saw on Friday. We can also see that there's a daily pivot that's been tested today. So far, it has broken out into an all-time high, breaking the high from the middle of the week last week. And if we just slide this down a little bit, we can see that there's nothing really above price, but there is double pivots a few points higher, which potentially could be the next place we find resistance, since the double pivots last week were so important to price. So this one looking far more interesting than the S&P and the Dow Jones this week, and continuation of higher prices here look on the cards after breaking into an all-time high already today. If you take a look at the currency, so if we just take a look at pound versus the US dollar, we had the close of last month as well last week. So looking interesting here on the monthly chart. If we just open that up, and we can see that it's pulled back into the buy zone on the monthly chart, and we can see 2 months in a row now rejecting this area that's so important to price in the past, 137, quite an important level going back a significant amount of years. It sold off quite strong at one stage during the month, but gained back a lot of those and closed quite strong as well, and gaining back a lot of the losses basically. So looking quite interesting there on that chart. We have the daily chart now in a nice uptrend as well. Now, it did spend most of the week underneath that 138 level, but it did break through on Thursday, a nice strong candle on Thursday, and continuation on Friday. So looking quite good there up to the next level there at 139. So on the 4-hour chart here, we can see it pulling back into the moving average zone here, pulling back nice and deep here, giving us plenty of room to the next levels there. We have a couple of other minor levels before that 139. So we have that 138.80 mark that's easy to pick up there on the 4-hour chart as well. And then we have the 139 level there, which is looking quite interesting as well. So on the lower time frames, this is the action now. The dollar this morning is quite strong. So this is dragging this quite low and deep into this area, but we're still more or less right at this old high here. And we can see the resistance and all the resistance it had on the way up there. It's just there at the moment. Hopefully we get some support, maybe a turnaround in the dollar, picking up some of the weakness that it had last week would also help this market as well, because the pound is verging on being a strong market this morning. So if we take a look at one of the more interesting commodities this morning, I think is gold. So just looking at gold last week again, more or less a kind of a boring week for quite a while. If you look at the daily chart, it was underneath that 1820 level for most of the week, but the non-farm payroll numbers were quite disappointing, and that rallied a lot of these precious metals So this was up a couple of percent at one point. I think silver was up around 4% at one point, but it's retracing back now, and we can see the next level on the daily chart there, very easy to pick up as well, 1840, quite supportive in the past there in the end of last year and the beginning of this year. And we can also see some resistance during the summer as well, more or less. So it's broken out Friday, pulling back into some nice area here on the 4-hour chart would be nice. We can see that level there being so resistant on the way up, nice and precise, and hopefully supportive on the way down. And it's making its way back there at the moment. So interesting to see what happens here. The 4-hour moving averages will have caught up at that point, and we have this action here on the 60-minute chart. So quite a bit of stuff going on there as well. We have a weekly pivot printed just roughly around that area as well, a little bit higher than that level, just at some of these highs from last week as well, from that sideways action we got. So some interesting looking charts there, and an interesting week on the economic calendar as well. So I hope it helps, and we'll be back next Monday.